Good evening. This is a meeting of the Athens Board of Zoning Appeals. The time is 6:59 p.m. and the date is November 8, 2016. And the control room, maybe we could reduce the volume in here, please, as we are getting some echo. At this time, I will call the meeting to order. The board consists of 5 members and 2 alternates, the alternates taking full part in the discussions and becoming a voting member in the absence of a member or when a member abstains for conflict of interest. Present tonight are members Ms. Betty Hollow, Ms. Kate Housley, Ms. Joan Krajnansky, Ms. Lisa Carson, and alternate present tonight is Mr. Aaron Thomas. I'm John Goldsey, the chair. Also present are zoning administrator Mr. Rick Serois and secretary Mr. Paul Eschenbacher. At this time, I invite you to view a pre-recorded video on the rules and procedures of the board.
The Athens Board of Zoning Appeals operates according to the following procedures. The chair will name and describe the case. The zoning administrator or secretary will state the basis of the objection and any applicable facts or conditions pertaining to the case. The appellant or their representative will give reason why the appeal should be viewed favorably. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the request will be heard. Anyone wishing to speak in general comment will be heard. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition will be heard. If necessary, the appellant or their representative will offer concluding, summary, or rebuttal remarks. Testimony from the floor shall be closed. The board will deliberate and render a decision. According to Athens City Code, Section 23.07.03b, the board has power to grant variances from the strict application of the code, provided the variance will not be contrary to the public interest, the spirit of the code is observed, public safety and welfare are secured, and substantial justice is done. According to Athens City Code, Section 23.07.10c, variances from the code shall not be granted unless the board makes specific findings of fact based directly on the particular evidence presented to it, that the standards and conditions imposed in this title, if applicable, have been met by the applicant. Exceptional circumstances. There are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applying to the property in question or to the intended use of the property that do not apply generally to other properties or classes or uses in the same zone. Practical difficulty and undue hardship. Because of exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions pertaining to a specific piece of property, a literal enforcement of these regulations will result in practical difficulty or undue hardship that is unnecessary to the achievement of public purposes. Preservation of equal property rights. Literal interpretation of these regulations would deprive the appellant of rights commonly enjoyed by others in the same zone and the same vicinity, while a granting of the requested variance will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied to other properties in the same zone and the same vicinity. Minimum variance. The variance granted is the minimum variance required to make possible the reasonable use of the property. Absence of detriment. The authorizing of such variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property and will not materially impair the purpose of the zoning code or the public interest. Not of a general nature. The condition or situation of the specific piece of property or the intended use of said property for which variance is sought, one or the other or in combination, is not of so general or recurrent a nature as to make reasonably practicable the formulation of a general regulation for such condition or situation. Any person, resident, or officer, department, or appointed body of the City of Athens, aggrieved by a decision of the board, may petition the Athens County Court of Common Pleas concerning the illegality of the decision. Such petition must be filed within 30 days after the mailing of the decision of the board to the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. There is only one case tonight, case number 16-11V. The board is required to take testimony under oath. Would anyone wishing to speak concerning any item on the agenda please stand? Do you swear or affirm that any testimony you will present to the board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Be seated, please. Okay, our case is case number 16-11B. The property is at 237 West State Street. Zone is M for manufacturing. And the appellant is the Zemo Enterprise LCC. Appellant is requesting a variance from ACC 230408A, referencing ACC 230407A3, to allow an eating and drinking establishment 105 feet from an R1 zone where 200 feet distance is the minimum requirement. And from ACC 23047A8 to allow a bottling works 35 feet from an R zone where 100 feet distance is the minimum requirement. Is there anything you would like to add, Mr. Royce? No.
For itself.
Any questions for the code office before we go to the appellant?
I have a question regarding this map, where the star that indicates where the building is, looks like it's an R3 zone.
No. Where the star is?
Yeah.
Is in an M.
What appears on the map to be an M zone, and,
Oh,
yeah, so that was a clarification that had occurred prior to
Yeah.
this, after the first refusal of our.
Right.
Of our.
Okay.
that's okay.
Yeah.
That's all right. That's okay. What I have is that's actually an M zone in that small spot. It was zoned improperly, and we found that through historical. Mr. Sauber went back and did his homework and found that that had been zoned. It's actually an M zone in that little spot right there, in this section.
And does M zone correspond to industrial zone in our code book?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, you may come to the podium over there and state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Kelly Sauber. I live at 84 2nd Street in Athens, Ohio.
Would you like to say anything?
Yeah,
State your
absolutely,
case.
absolutely. Well, I guess to begin in stating my case, I'd like to start with just discussing the historical use of the structure, which dates back to prior to University Commons, when the railroad was still through, CSX Railroad was still through that zone. Can you hear me?
Speak up a little.
I'm sorry. All right.
Okay.
I'm not very good at throwing my voice. I will try it.
You should have a microphone, but
There is not.
so if you could just speak a little louder.
Is that a microphone? Nope. Okay. Well, historically speaking, this site had been used by the Athens Messenger while the railroad was still there as a point of unloading their paper rolls years and years ago, prior to University Commons actually taking over the old railroad bed when CSX pulled out the tracks. After that, Billy Matters and his wife's family took over the location and used it as an electric motor rewinding company for, I want to say, over 3 decades, as an industrial location, fixing people's equipment, rewinding electric motors and the such. So historically, the site has always been used for relatively mid to heavy level industry. We're hoping to utilize it as a new location for our distillery, which is presently located in Meigs County. We're about 20 miles south of Athens on Old Route 33 in the Burlingham area. We've been in business as a distillery since 2012 with relative success. We're doing well. We're in about 35 locations throughout Ohio as far as liquor agencies. And then the liquor agencies distribute to multiple other locations throughout the state as far as restaurants, bars, retail sites that wish to carry our spirits. So historically, that location was manufacturing. We We would like to argue that the location still should be used for industry due to the zoning, and I think that our use would fit in Athens quite well for multiple reasons. One of the reasons being that we presently do have a fermentation industry that is doing quite well in the city, which is drawing a lot of traffic from out of town, counting the 3 breweries that are now in the city. Our cider house, my partner Deanna is the primary for the West End Cider House, so they would benefit as well. Not to mention the multiple wineries that are surrounding Athens area, be it Shade Winery, Wolf Tree, the new brewery actually up in Nelsonville that just opened. Pomeroy, Ohio now has a brewery as well. So we think that we could fit into this, this fermentation network that would actually help continue drawing more economy, more economic development and tourism into our area. We've already tied as a business with organizations out of Columbus that actually do brewery tours that we've been on down in Meigs County, which is a bit distant, but it's worked out, and they've come down multiple times to enjoy showing people from Columbus our region for spirits, wines, and beers. So with that in mind, I think that ties in with a local industry that is already booming and already drawing traffic, not to mention Ohio Brew Week being centered, of course, here in Athens, Ohio, which economically proves to be one of the best weeks in this entire city throughout the summer. And many bars and restaurants actually refer to it as better than Halloween weekend for their sales. So that's that side of the coin. I know that at our present location with the cider house, what we're hoping to do is utilize this as the primary production facility for the ciders as well. We are licensed as a winery at the cider house in Athens, and my distillery down in Meigs is also licensed as a winery, which is what cider is technically referred to as. So we're looking at moving all of our cider options or operations along with our distillery operations to here, which would really simplify the operations and potentially increase our sales for the cidery, but definitely increase the knowledge of our product as far as our spirits within the city. And with that, when we succeed, and much of our mission statement has always said, our goal is to make sure that all of the farmers that provide everything that we utilize is also hopefully going to succeed. All of our apples are all from southeastern Ohio. The furthest away is Pataskala and Chillicothe. All of the fruits that we use in our ciders are all local fruits within Ohio for certain. Most of them are southeastern Ohio. Many of them are even wild harvested, providing jobs for people that generally don't even have an income source other than picking wild fruit and selling it. So we think that that could also be an asset to the community, not to mention allowing us this opportunity to bring our business into the city. Our payroll taxes and the 1.7%, I believe is what it's at right now for the city's income tax, would just be a benefit to the city as well for the income in that respect. What else do we have? Moving into as the code, as we were going over, through the video, much of the interest, it appears, is also how this would fit into the city's comprehensive plan. And I personally have found, and there might be more, but I found 3 pretty strong arguments that fit within the comprehensive plan that I'd like to go over. One of them, first of which, would be within the land use and urban design section, specifically 5-3, which I could read the entire item, but the long and short of it is the city, well, I'll just read it. It is important that the City of Athens monitor demand for commercial property and avoid the pitfall of allowing new commercial development to sprawl outward while older commercial developments struggle and close, leaving empty buildings. Which is one item that after Billy Matters and his family were having problems, we were in hopes that we could utilize an existing structure without sprawling and asking the city to annex or assist us in locations outside of the city. This is just another method of cutting down that blight that potentially could occur with that structure. So it does go on to say, preferably new commercial development activity could utilize older obsolete buildings rather than constantly pushing out toward greenfield sites, leaving decaying and functionally obsolete places. So this is all in section 5.3 of the Land Use and Urban Design of the City of Athens Comprehensive Plan. So the second location within the plan that I feel that fits our wishes to move into the great city of Athens is section 5-7, which is talking about industrial development areas. Presently, it goes in, it's a long section, I can discuss it, but it discusses 3 primary industrial locations that the city wishes to develop into potentially. And granted, this was
We
written.
have copies of that.
Okay, okay.
So, thank you.
So I'm a strong believer that utilizing this section of town, which is completely chock full presently of manufacturing zones, the entire HDL Center, all the way to the river, all the way to basically the old riverbed, I should specify, to the Richland Avenue Bridge, basically almost to the hospital. That entire zone is practically manufacturing. The entire end of West State Street is zoned M, which is industrial as well. The cemetery and the fairgrounds are all zoned M. The only breach is the 1993 or 94 change when the University Commons changed their zone to R3 to allow for the multifamily residential unit to be built in the old railroad bed. Other than that, we're a contiguous manufacturing zone. Matter of fact, in the plan, as it says, at one point they were even suggesting that the fairgrounds were to become the next industrial site to help develop small industry within the community. Also, mentioning that culturally could be a problem. So that's 5.7. I'm going into the final section that I pulled out of the city comprehensive plan, 10.3. It just goes in to talk about helping create the new micro businesses in the community. And we tie into not just a micro business, because we are a small operation. We presently have 13 employees at the cider house. And presently we have 1 employee with the distillery, which will probably grow to 2 if we move to the city, and potentially more down the road. But the micro industry that we're involved in here in the city is growing and doing phenomenally. The brewing industry alone is in double-digit increases throughout the nation. Craft distilleries are on the rise, and they're doing quite well. And we got in at the right time for our distillery, and we really think the city of Athens could benefit us there. But with that, it would increase the tourism, in my opinion, here within the city. So that's...
Well, thank you. We have some questions. We start with Ms. Hollow.
Sure.
Well, first of all, I don't really know what's involved in a distillery.
Okay.
So I don't know how much traffic that involves, how many employees that involves,
Sure.
how much noise that involves, traffic in and out. Tell
Okay.
me about that.
Okay. Well, look at a distillery as a small craft brewery that takes the finished product, say beer, to the next stage, which just takes it through the distillation level. So presently we are producing less than the amount of product that is coming out of the Union Street Jackie O's operation. But our operation, basically, we're a small brewery and a small winery. So basically we make beer, which we then distill into spirits. So excuse me when I say a small brewery, because we don't sell beer as a finished product, but beer is a middle of the road product for a distillery, because distillation doesn't make alcohol. Distillation separates alcohol from other liquid solutions based on vapor points or boiling points of those liquids. So you have to come up with an alcohol to begin with. So every distillery has to start off either with a wine or a beer to be able to then distill. So we do both. We make a lot of wines using grapes that are left over from pressings from Shade Winery, for example, which we make a second small wine from his pomace and distill that. As far as noise, we're a day operation. There's no sound or problems with pressing at all. As far as the brewing side, because we do make beer, which we then distill into our gin, our vodka, our bourbon, our malt whiskeys, and those products do start off as a grain-based alcoholic beverage, so we do make beer. So you do have the aroma characteristics that you do receive from any small brewery. But as I said, right now, presently, we're probably producing about an eighth of the amount of beer that the Union Street operation is producing, which we then distill into spirits. So we're a small operation. As far as increasing traffic flow, our hope down the road, and we're looking at doing a 3-phase operation where we would start just moving our production facility for the distillery and the winery/brewery, which are just stages in the process. But the distillery, we're hoping we can move in initially almost right away. Very little build out necessary. I've already spoken with Andy Stone a little bit, and we still need to work more as far as sewer line connections and the such. But there will be probably practically no traffic increase at all for the first year, just because I'm looking at moving into production alone. Once we have time to move into phase 2 of our project, which we would hope to put in basically a small store of sorts, because as our license allows, we are allowed to sell as a small liquor store. So we do have the legal right to sell, at least at our present location, to sell bottles of product for off-premise consumption for people to take the product and go home with it and enjoy at their leisure at their location, but not on premise. Now down the road, phase 3, we already have 2 restaurateurs that have been interested in working with us because we do have more space in this location than we need. It's 6,400 square feet. Presently, I'm working my distillery out of 1,000 square feet. I'm hoping to adjust that to 3,000 to 3,500, leaving roughly 3,000 square feet left over, which we are considering putting in a small restaurant of sorts. 2 different restaurateurs are really hoping to tie in with me to do that. Once that happens, of course, that would increase your traffic flow. We do appear to have, from what my measurements were on the space, I think we presently have 16 spaces available in parking at the location, which can expand.
So how many employees would be involved in the distillery itself?
Me plus 1, so 2 people
Okay,
presently.
okay. And what about the noise?
There really is no noise. It's the process of stirring grains into liquid. The loudest aspect of the operation would be pumps running, which, as long as the bearings are in good condition, there's really no noise from that aspect. My bottling line, which is the point of contention, is the fact that we are a bottling operation. We last year sold at our distillery 2,800 plus bottles of product, which is not bad for a small operation, but it's very minimal. All hand processing. We don't have bottles clanking down a bottling line. So really the largest amount of noise would be a pump and potentially an air compressor.
Okay, and you mentioned the aroma. What about how this smells to people who live nearby?
Yeah, that's one of my big questions, is exhaust, if you're doing
Understand.
and so that's kind of crucial.
Right. Well, do you find walking down Union Street offensive in front of Jackie O's?
It's about,
Because that's the smell that will be
Okay.
coming from the location.
but it's a different thing to walk past a place than to live next door to
Oh, I
it.
understand. I understand. But do you notice Jackie O's when you're on Union Street as a passerby?
I don't walk by Jackie.
Okay. Well, that's my point. The aromas will exist, and they do happen from time to time. But
But
say we're brewing.
isn't Jackie O's distilling their stuff up down
Somewhere
on
else.
whatever
Well, they
street?
brew.
They still don't own Union.
They
Off
do.
of-
They
off
do
of
brew at both
Stimson.
locations.
But you have 2 big tanks in the front window.
Yeah, they do brew at that location.
Okay.
Matter of fact, they
Well,
brew roughly 4 days a week presently at the Union Street location. And presently, in my operation in Meg's, I'm brewing about once every 2 months, just to kind of put the amount of aroma in perspective.
Okay.
Now, I am hoping to increase that, of course.
Right, that would be one, because
Sure.
if you're going from 1,000 square feet, so how many
3,000.
square feet do you have in the area that section of the building, I guess that'd be the west side there?
Correct.
How many square feet is that where you're going to be doing your distilling?
Primarily, roughly, all said and done, about 3,000 square feet. Now, that will include my storage, and I guess I should back up a little bit and say that I'm using 1,000 square feet in my main production facility presently, But I do have a separate metal barn, which is roughly 1,000 feet, which stores all my glass bottles, my raw product, be it the grains, the corn, the malted barley, and aging product, because we do age spirits on premise. So I'm roughly in 2,000 presently, if we look at all said and done. And I'm looking at moving all of that here. But before, the production side will increase, I suppose, but hopefully it will increase.
I mean, that would be the point. Well,
All right?
one of the difficulties I had with this is, the packet that we received was, there really wasn't a business plan, more or less, which would have given us all this information.
I apologize for that.
Yeah, that would have been extremely helpful. And in walking down there, I spent a good deal of time down there today. The proximity to the university courtyard, and I know that you could walk past Jackio's, and I'm not sure how they vent. I mean, I've done the brewery tours in town, and I've been out the Shade Winery, so I know a lot of this stuff is self-contained, but I'm thinking of exhaust, and this is going to lift. Those buildings they're spread apart. Breeze blows through there. I mean, I've known people that live there, so I've walked through there, and they're tall, and I'm a little concerned about the odor that's going to come off for the people that live in the second stories of those buildings or third stories of those buildings.
They may actually like it.
Well, I was going to, mention that aspect. At the cidery, actually, Guy Phillips owns our structure, and he had a hard time renting out the property until the cidery went in. And once the cidery went in, people actually started flocking, and he has no problem renting those spaces now, just as that point of reference.
Oh, you mean up on the second floor?
Of the cider house, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
right. Well,
Right.
well, he's been through here with that.
I understand.
We're pretty familiar with all that.
Right.
And I think it would be a good idea to have something in that space. It looks very decrepit, and I very much support small industry going into that area. The problem is it's so close to the residential areas, and which is not your fault at all, right? It was the way it got carved up. I personally supported keeping that all manufacturing so that we could actually use it in the future, and other people had other ideas, and it went forward, and then they left this one chunk. And so how is that chunk going to then fit into the neighborhood? I think most of the people in the neighborhood, I mean, I walk to the cider house. It's delightful. People love on the west side to be able to walk to these places, right? But so exhaust. So will you have, how is this vented? How are you going to vent doing your, not so much your beer, because that can be self-contained, and the wine is pretty self-contained from what I've observed. I haven't had to ask that question, though, when I did the tours. But distilling the spirits is actually, I think, more of a concern than the wines and the beers to get to that point. Okay.
Right. Well, I can address that. I have to say that the largest aromatic aspect of the entire operation is the actual brewing process, which is the process of taking malted grains, crushing them, blending them with water, hot water, and you're actually going through the cooking process. And much of what you smell is dimethyl sulfide. It smells like cooking corn, like cooked corn, sometimes even to the point of black olives, depending on your sense of smell and your ability to smell. So the brewing process is much more than the vapor producing process of distillation, because if there is aroma coming from the distillation process, then you're inefficient, you're actually losing product. So it's a wasteful, it's something that we certainly try not to do, just because as you vaporize alcohol, you're actually trying to collect all that vapor so that you can then reuse it, as a product. That's what we're selling, is that vapor. So the loss of vapor doesn't generally happen. So the largest aspect is truly the brewing of beer. And we do a lot of grape-based and a lot of apple-based, obviously, in production. And as far as the aromas coming off those, I don't think there's, anybody would truly have any concern about the smell of fermenting apples or fermenting grapes. There is some CO2 output, which would go into the atmosphere, of course. As far as the brewing process, we would go straight through the roof, just like any other brewery, basically, you know. And as I
You
said,
did say straight through the roof?
straight through the roof, yeah.
That's
yep,
what I thought you said.
Yep, straight through the roof, yeah.
And what about the cider? I've never experienced, I mean.
Well, cider is simply nothing more than crushed apples, squeeze the juice out, add yeast, let the yeast eat all those wonderful sugars, and you end up with alcohol.
Right, they just
basically.
ferment themselves,
They just ferment
okay.
themselves. As far as aromas coming off it, you do have esters and different yeasts that you can use, do cause some aroma qualities. Most people find them very appealing as far as the fruit character, because it is a fruit that is macerated, and you can smell the fruit process as it ferments. But it's very light. You know, I have neighbors in Meigs County, of course, and the only time people ever say, "Oh boy, it smells great, you're brewing," and just when I'm using grains. You know, as far as the apples and the grapes and the other various fruits we use, be it pawpaw or elderberries or persimmons or plums or all the different fun wild local fruits that we can get, I've never had any concerns with aromas on those. The brewing process would be the only one, and I would invite to say that Jackie O's on Union Street brews a lot more than I probably ever will, but even if I were to hit that level, I don't believe I've ever heard people complaining about the stench on Union Street. So that's my
Okay,
argument.
let's see if any more questions from the board, you folks?
I guess, let me see, I got a variety of notes here. So parking, you did mention parking. But nobody's determined if that's actually accurate, right? I mean, you know how
Correct,
much
that's
square
just
footage.
me. Yep. That was me just going off city code, figuring out how many square foot per parking space,
Right.
measuring out the spaces and saying, this is what it is.
And how many parking spaces did you think you had? Did you
I think 16 to 18, and there's additional zone.
If I may,
Please.
we calculated you need only about 12, and there's 20 spots.
Yeah, it's 20, okay.
So 12 for the employees in the distillery, and then the square footage of the restaurant and,
Right.
okay.
Right.
I guess my other concern was the school was, West Elementary School was so close, and,
Well, the Division of Liquor Control does specify you have to be a set distance, which is 500 feet from the school, and we're well beyond that limitation.
550.
500, period.
So you're only 50 feet. Well, I was at the code office today, and Mr. Eschenbacher did building to building, and it was 550 feet.
Well, 500 is the limitation, and also the way that the division, not that it's a concern to you folks, but the way Division of Liquor Control is door to door, actually. So using sidewalks and proper crosswalks. But if he did 550, just
That was building to
Building to
building.
building.
So
So we're-
I'm not, I'm
Right.
sure they have a way of doing that. So
Right.
that was not property line to property line. So that was another one of my concerns.
Well, I do want to specify if the concern is alcohol consumption as such, I believe that as far as establishments that do serve alcoholic beverages in the community of Athens, I think that we are probably the, how shall I say it without being arrogant, the best as far as being carding, IDing, keeping out minors, and actually keeping a clientele that actually is respectful of alcohol and its outcomes. And actually, we don't carry any low-end products in our operations at all. We don't carry anything that makes the young kids want to come and throw up in the corner. Because
Yeah, I don't think their kids, the elementary kids are gonna come down there and try to siphon the hose off right now.
Right, I don't think so
I'm
either.
not, I'm not thinking of that, but in the future, because we're also looking at the restaurant which will serve liquor, and I'm assuming most people would be respectful, but that was one of my concerns.
But we're not looking at the restaurant now.
Well, I
Well,
wonder.
yeah, we are, it's on here.
Well,
I believe we
drinking
technically are,
establishment.
actually, yeah.
But that's not part of the variant.
It is,
Yeah,
it's
it
right
is.
here.
The
It is.
restaurant?
There's the
Yeah, it
first one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
But-
not the bottling shop, but the one.
Oh,
that-
eating and drinking.
How,
Yeah.
can't think of the right word, how possible is that the restaurant will never materialize?
You know, I was in restaurants my entire life. I grew up with restaurants. I left restaurants in 1996 because I did not enjoy restaurants. So we don't take this lightly jumping into it. And it may never happen. I would say at this point a 50-50 chance. You know, as we're looking at the phasing in, the most important aspect is moving the cider production and the distillery production into this location. That's most important to us. Second stage of second importance is being able to sell off-premise consumption spirits for people to take, instead of going all the way to the east side
Right,
to
so you're
purchase their liquor.
pretty sure
in
phase
Birdsville
one,
Park.
phase two.
Right, and then phase three potentially could be
Now,
exactly,
if
you know.
phase 3 happens and you have a restaurant, you are not planning on serving outside on a patio or anything like that, right? It should be all enclosed.
I would have to say that
Because
that's a very
according-
tough thing to say at this point.
It
I
would
would
take up
love
your
to
parking
see.
space.
I would love to see. Well, I think there's enough room out front to put at least a small patio, and actually on the side. And I don't
Well,
think
if I
don't know
read
if
the
you.
code correctly, it has to be
Has
enclosed.
to be enclosed.
Right.
It has
right,
to
right,
be
right.
enclosed.
Right. Well, we would meet code if we got to that point.
So you understand that?
I do
Okay.
understand that. Yeah. And the enclosed is 3 sides and roof, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know, we would have to clarify
Right.
that.
Right.
No.
But that's not an issue at this
That
stage
is,
of the game, honestly.
Okay. And Joan, we had a case, remember, it was the onion odor?
What?
The awning, right, not to be enclosed, but, and, you know, and then we have several situations in this
Yeah.
town.
I have one question. As you're standing over there, you can just remain standing. For the code office, should the odor be a problem in the future and there's complaints, what kind of action can the code office take?
We can address it. Go
They
ahead.
file a complaint about the variance given. There's a section for you guys that when you give a variance and then later on if there's a problem arisen from that variance, that people can file a complaint and ask you guys to review the variance.
Okay.
On the same question, if I may, sound ordinances specify specific timeframes if there were to become an aroma problem, which I really don't anticipate. But would there be an issue with time of day where aromas are allowed? Because really, the aromas aren't going to be much different from, say, Village Bakery baking some wonderful bread, just for what it's worth. So are there specific times where you're not allowed to put aromas out there? Is that, no, okay.
No, but the problem
Okay.
is, see, this is the dilemma with this spot, right? Is
Right.
that they had this little encapsulated piece sitting between our zones, right?
Right.
And so, not to discourage what you want to do, but to try, and I actually went around and knocked on a couple people's doors down on Central that I know to see if I could get some feedback on this. Because,
Sure.
I mean,
Sure.
just because I walked down there, the wind's not drifting my way, so, you know, it's not going to personally offend me, but what people would think about this, unfortunately, nobody was home. I did talk to one person who felt there wasn't enough information. When I queried them, they live on West State Street, across from Miller's, a couple doors down from Miller's, right? And, you know, just to get some feedback from, and I don't know if you have had any feedback from anyone in the neighborhood. I mean, you're in the area, so as to what, you know, people, I mean, we didn't get any letters of support and
Right.
didn't get any letters that.
Well, I do have actually one letter of support that I was going to pass along to you folks today, and that's from Bureau Ratcliffe family, Steve, his son, sent a letter of support, but that's a business support, not a
Right,
written
okay,
structure.
yeah.
But in reference to, you know, we have quite a few customers specifically from the west side at our operation, and just in regular discussions, there's a lot of excitement about this operation moving into that building.
Right, so
So-
the cider
so-
house itself would still exist.
Of course, yes, yes.
And then you would have, the other operation would be your distillery.
Right.
So another question I have, because it's just, I think the clarification that if there was a problem with the odor, that
We could review it.
we could reviewed this, but because you have all these phases, would you be willing to split up this? I mean, we can't split this up. There are two variances here. And do one for the distillery. And then,
What would be the purpose of that?
well, because the eating and drinking establishment is,
But that's not as much of an issue as the bottling itself.
well, except the distance is even less. It's 200 feet and they only have 105 feet, right?
Right, but in the other case, it needs to be 100 feet away, and they only have 35
35.
feet away.
But okay, so at this point, we're not granting this variance to these individuals. We're granting this variance to the property. They
Exactly.
are requesting it.
Right.
And if we would grant a certain kind of eating and drinking establishment in that area that is barely 50% of the distance required, if something would happen and they would move on or sell up, then this property has this variance.
Well, it
That
has a
was,
variance
That is
for
the
two
issue.
specific
That's
things.
something that I discussed with the code office, and maybe we should have looked into as a conditional use, because like you said, if the manufacturing changes to, let's say, plastic injection, or something else, and in the
But-
future, then this variance is specific to this
Yes,
kind
it
of,
is.
it may not apply anymore.
To a particular,
It would have to
And
be
the
a
answer-
restaurant and a
and the an-
bottling place.
And the answer was that this variance is a maximum, so most likely any other business may not need to this extent.
Well, I have a question for the code. Far as I live on the east side of town, and my business is on the east side of town. What is the difference between what Village Bakery have in that corner with a residential neighborhood behind them, comparable to what he's doing on the west side of town? Because that's what I'm thinking is what he's offering, far as the smells. And I understand, I relate what you said about Jackie O's, because my friends lived on top of over the old Sundry, which was right next door when it was a Hooley's, which was, going on almost 18 years ago. But,
96, yeah.
we couldn't smell nothing. We smelled Chipotle as of right now. If you go uptown, you smell Chipotle over Jackie O's.
Right.
But, that was my, I'm just trying to compare to what you're doing on the west side of town and what's already going on uptown Athens and on the east side of town, as far as the restaurants. I live on the far east side, so I smell, if Texas Roadhouse is busy and the wind is blowing my way, I'm going to smell it.
Right.
Or if Applebee's is busy and it's blowing my way, I'm going to smell it. And my friend used to live behind the old Hardee's, where Donato's is, and we used to smell biscuits every morning. So, I'm just thinking about, when it comes down to residential area and the smells, it's far worse smells in town than that, So, in comparison, far as like, what is the level of a smell, like, comparable?
Right.
Is it Hardy smell, or is it, city sewer smell? Far as, is it a good aroma, or is it gonna be a bad smell?
Right.
Because I've been in microbreweries, big microbreweries, and yeah, it is a heavy odor inside, but you can't smell anything outside.
Right. And we are a small operation. We do plan on expanding, obviously, and hopefully we will grow, but we don't have world takeover plans.
Let's have other questions besides odor.
Can I say one
Sure.
more thing about odor?
Okay.
There's already a strong chicken smell in
Right. I wasn't gonna mention that smell.
Yeah.
I left that smell
So,
out.
I mean, it's not really clear to me that, I presumably in the residences there, you can smell Miller's chicken.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
And if the wind's blowing, you smell OU
yeah,
facility.
yeah. So that seems to me, I don't know, it's hard for me to believe that whatever is going to be
Right.
emanating from this business is
Right.
going to cancel out the smells that are already in the area.
Right.
Okay.
That's
Any
what I was
other
thinking, too.
questions, non-odor questions?
Non-odor
I have a
related.
question. This first part talks about so many feet from an R1 zone. Which of these places is an
Does it say
There's a-
R1?
Yes,
North.
Does it?
the first one is R1, the second variance
Well,
is.
oh,
Yeah,
any
but on
R.
the map,
North of the building,
It's north. It would be
So I don't
up
see it on the
Central
map.
on
Avenue.
the other side of,
West
if you're
State.
familiar, it's the other
You can
side of
see
West
it
State
here.
Street.
So here comes West Union.
Yeah, this
No,
is an
I mean
off-
State Street along here. And so all of this is R3, except for this strange little manufacturing. And then all of this
right.
going up off of Central.
But
is
but it's
R1.
above this
R1,
map?
No, I'm looking at, you have the Innovation Center here.
And
Isn't
this-
it here?
Then you have the fairground.
No, you can look on this one. So all of this block up here, this, all
There's a lot more going on
this
down there.
this is R1.
So that
This
was
is
my whole thing.
R3.
Yeah, but we're only
More
talking
going on
150
here.
feet, right?
I think they're talking
Right,
about
well, I
this
mean, you can smell that
R3.
any time of the day.
But it doesn't
than
relate to
I'm
R2, it relates
looking at
only to
comparing-
R1.
No,
Well,
the
it
second one
relates
is
to
just like any
R3 as well.
R zone.
That one, but not the first
And
one.
their
The first one,
expansion,
R1.
when they
But
bought,
the way,
Abrios
the way the code reads, it reverts
So,
back
I
to the
mean,
R1.
and that's Green Street is behind
go to
there. My
R3.
buddy lives
Folks,
there.
let's have one conversation at a time, please.
The eating and drinking establishments minimum distance refers only to R1 and R2.
Okay.
Bottling works, distance refers to any R zone.
Right.
Okay.
ours
But
is-
the first one, wouldn't that be moot because there's not an R1 within that distance?
But obviously there is.
There is, right
It's right across West State
State
Street there.
Street is all R1. See that faint, that dull-looking gray area, not the dark?
Yeah.
That's all R1.
Here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
R1.
Brown
Okay,
Because it's not marked.
Okay.
It's the only one that's not marked.
okay.
Yeah.
Done?
There's
Anything
only-
else?
There's only one thing I want to say.
Sure.
I think, obviously, this has been a manufacturing little strip. There's still a plumbing store there. Just sells stuff, doesn't make anything. And I understand you're putting this in from the comprehensive plan. But the comprehensive plan also says, though they may not mean it anymore, that each one of the residential neighborhoods in the town that are close in should be protected in every possible way. So that's my only problem. Okay. I don't know that you would be unprotecting them, but, okay.
We do live in that community ourselves, for the record.
Well, I,
What were you thinking about conditional?
well, that was just an idea came, that again, this variance is gonna be with this property, even if the manufacturing nature changes.
Right.
And so this 150 or 200 or 100 feet is based on this specific proposal, on this type of business. But
So it would have to be.
another business has to be another variance then.
Well, they just have to come again if it were a different, if they weren't going to be.
But again, if
eating
you are
and
giving a
drinking.
variance, this is gonna go
Go
for
with the properties.
ever.
With the
But for
property.
these specific things.
Yeah,
For
Bottling,
a bottling works.
yeah.
okay.
And so we're
And a
giving a
restaurant.
variance only for a bottling works and/or
Yes, yes,
eating and drinking establishment.
right.
But you could have an eating and drinking establishment in the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but that's not what they are really wanting
That's not what
to
they're
do.
wanting to do, but I'm just saying that
It's
if the
possible.
variance is granted, then that would be,
The case.
that
yeah.
would be the case,
Right.
right? Yes.
Okay. Do people object to new restaurants opening though? Surely not. I mean, if that down the line.
I think a whole restaurant would be less objectionable than having a brewery or distillery and a restaurant, so.
But that's where everything's going now. I mean, that's
Yeah.
where everything is moving now across the country, throughout the state.
Right.
So I mean, to have something in city limits is a huge asset to tourism.
Well, I did check out those sexual businesses. The code has updated itself on distances, so, I mean, anything could happen in that place, but.
I don't think so, not what
No,
they've
it
got
can't,
now.
because it needs to be 1,000 feet.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's one of the
Right.
reasons I checked with code about how far from the school, so it'd have to be 1,000 feet, so. in thinking down the line as to what could become of the property in so near to a residential neighborhood.
But if the variance is only granted to a bottling, doesn't that mean that the variance wouldn't continue unless there was another bottling operation?
Right.
That's what I
it
wanted
says.
to verify with you
Yeah.
folks.
That's what it says.
The way the variance is listed, if somebody wanted to use this building after these folks, they could only use it for bottling works and eating and drinking establishment.
Right.
Okay, perfect.
Or one of those three.
Anything, any other business, provided, I mean, these businesses have to be a certain distance from our zone.
Right.
We don't know what people in the future might put in the building, that might put in something that doesn't require any distance.
Anything, yeah.
Correct.
We don't know,
Okay,
It would be a change of use.
yeah.
Right.
okay, I guess we don't want to keep you waiting, so, I don't see anybody else who wants to talk in favor or in opposition or general comments, so we close the discussion from the floor, unless you have something that you want to say the last word.
I think all the information's there.
Okay, you rest, right?
Thank you.
You may
I
have,
rest.
you may have a seat.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, we can either discuss more or have a motion.
Okay, I guess I can do this. I move that the board approve case 16-11V, the appellant, Zymo Enterprise LLC, for property located at 237 West State Street, for a variance from Athens City Code 23.0408A, referencing Athens City Code 230407A3, to allow an eating and drinking establishment 105 feet from an R1 zone where 200-foot distance is the minimum requirement, and from Athens City Code 230407A8 to allow a bottling works 35 feet from an R zone where 100 feet distance is the minimum requirement.
Do we have a second?
A second.
You are alternating.
Oh,
Can't
man,
second.
I think.
Okay, Ms. Hollow, second. Okay, should we go through the findings?
Yep.
Exceptional circumstances. There are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applying to the property in question or to the intended use of the property that do not apply generally to other properties or classes or uses in the same zone.
Yes, it's a very tiny strip in the wrong place, but historically, it has been there.
And it is
still
kind of
is.
tucked away. It's not on the way of people be walking, or, so that's kind of a,
Well, I think it's
justifies maybe the distance.
just the weird place where it is.
Any other
The
comments on that?
zone it's in is the difficulty.
Aaron, you can discuss too, you know.
Is either somebody gonna be there or it's gonna be eyesore and be empty.
It's out of the way, it doesn't show much.
Practical difficulty and undue hardship. Is there any practical difficulty or undue hardship in this case?
Well, it's going to be difficult to put very many things in that particular tiny zone surrounded by R zones. So it's not just for
Right.
this appellant, but maybe for anybody who wants to use it.
And it is M-zoned anyway, so. Preservation of equal property rights. Literal interpretation of these regulations would deprive the appellant of rights commonly enjoyed by others in the same zone and the same vicinity, while a granting of the requested variance will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied to other properties in the same zone and the same vicinity. There are no manufacturing of any sort in this neighborhood anymore, is it?
No,
It's an innovation center, it's down the street, that's it.
Yeah.
well, they're not making anything.
Yes,
Are they
are.
making?
Yes.
They make stuff.
Yeah, they got 3D printers and lasers and,
Okay.
Is this the minimum variance?
Seems quite minimum to me.
to make possible the reasonable use of the property.
I think so.
Okay. Absence of detriment, aside from odor.
Well, but we understand that if, I think
Yeah,
we're comfortable.
that's
that-
minimal, I think.
Yes, that it can be altered if there is an absence, if there is detriment to the neighborhood.
Yeah. And not of a general nature.
No.
No.
Okay. Are we ready to vote?
Yes.
All in favor of this variance or granting the variance, please raise your hand. Okay, we have 5-0. He doesn't count tonight.
We have to practice.
I'm here for moral support.
What's your opinion, sir?
Okay, let's go. We have just disposition of the minutes from September 13, 2016 meeting. I read it. I didn't find anything. Anybody else is okay? Do we have a motion to approve the minutes of September 13, 2016?
Yes, I move we do such.
Second? Okay, the minutes are approved. And since we have discussed all the business and without any objection, we adjourn the meeting.